The flange and chorus effect is used to apply, hey, flange and chorus. So let's go ahead and apply that to our happy snake charmer layer here. And basically what flange and chorus does is that it applies a delay, a little tiny delay, like a copy of the file. And in flange and chorus language, that delay is called a voice. And with the flange and chorus effect, we have control over those voices, how many of them there are, how far apart the delay is, and a few other options as well. In general, a flange effect will make kind of like a warbly, kind of like a like that type of like a wibbly wobbly type sound, like you're underwater, kind of like a space age sound or what have you. And chorus makes it sound like there's a multitude of something, like there's a big group. Often this is a substitute for recording vocals over and over again or acoustic guitar over and over again. They'll just basically slap some chorus on it and it'll sound like multiple guitars. If you're a fan of the Ramones, that's kind of like the sound that Joey Ramone had on his voice, where it sounded like there were multiple Joey Ramones. Now, he actually probably recorded his voice over and over again to get that effect, but the chorus effect essentially does the same thing. Now, in After Effects, the flange and chorus effect defaults to flange. Now, first I'm going to turn this off, and let's preview the audio without any effect applied to it. Okay, good enough. Now what we want to do here is kind of make this a little bit thicker and a little bit more exotic. It's supposed to have kind of like a sitar sound, but it's a little bit stale and flat. So we're going to add flange to kind of beef this up and to make it a little bit more exotic sounding. So I'm going to turn back on the flange and chorus effect, and let's hear what it sounds like with the default settings. Now we're getting there, but it's not quite warbly enough. What I'm going to do is take up the modulation rate. About 2 should be good. Let's take up the modulation depth, maybe to about 65 or so. Let's preview that one more time with these changes. Again, you use the period on the numeric keypad to preview only audio in After Effects. There we go. So we're starting to get a little bit of that warbly flange sound. Now let's talk about some of these parameters a little bit here. We have the voice separation time. Remember that the voices referred to in this effect are basically delays or copies of the original sound. So the separation time is kind of like delay. Why they called it separation time and not delay, I'm not quite sure. Voices are the number of delays. Increasing the voices is basically like increasing the fullness. I'm going to skip ahead here and talk about this stereo voices. When stereo voices is checked, the first voice goes to the left speaker, the second voice goes to the right speaker, the third voice goes back to the left speaker, and so on and so forth. So basically, they're split in stereo. It creates a pretty cool effect. Now, this dry out and wet out we covered in the last segment on delay, so I won't cover that again here. And the other key parameters here are modulation rate and depth. Rate is basically the speed of the warbling. Do you want like a slow overarching, like wow, wow, that type of thing? So then you want to slow down the modulation rate. If you want kind of like a really quick vibration type sound, then you want to bump up the rate. And the modulation depth is like the amount of modulation. So that's basically flange. What if you wanted to do chorus? Well, what I'm going to do is click the reset button to reset my settings here. Now, if you consult the help that comes with After Effects, they'll give you some settings for kind of like a sample of what chorus is. I find their settings to be terrible, actually, so I'm going to modify these a little bit. Basically, for voice separation time, I'm going to take this to maybe 17, and I'm going to hit the Tab key and go to Voices, and I'm going to make 4 voices. Again, the voices are really important for chorus because that's the whole point, of course, is that there's multiple voices or multiple copies of the same tone. For modulation rate, I'm going to change this to 0.1. I'm going to change modulation depth. We'll actually leave it at 50. Voice phase change, we're going to take to 90, and we're absolutely going to make sure that stereo voices is checked. Typically with the flange and chorus effect, your dry and wet outs are left at 50%. So I'm not going to touch those. But again, if you wanted to increase the amount of the effect, basically take the whole adjustment with the flange and chorus effect to make it louder, then you want to increase the wet out value. So now let's hear what this sounds like as a chorus effect. I'm still not too happy with that. I think the voice separation time is a little bit too much. So I'm going to take that down a little bit. For my money, when the delay is a little bit too long with the chorus effect, it tends to sound really muddy. So let me go forward in time a little bit more to kind of jump to the punch here and preview one more time. That sounds really thick and rich and full. What I'm going to do is go out a little bit more in time, turn off the effect, and here's the before of the same portion. So it's definitely not pathetic and weak, but it sounds much more rich and full, like there's like this huge orchestra with the flange and chorus effect.